great thing about pickleball is it's almost social glue. I think people in California drink just as much as we do.
Do you think are doctors equipped to assess Alzheimer's?
Everybody over the age of 65 should be getting their annual Medicare wellness test.
You should be a little bit concerned, and it's a shot across the bows.
Welcome to Who Dinks Wins from the Special Pickleball Service with me, Coach Beresford.
And me, Coach Montgomery.
We're joined by Claire Day, Chief Mission and Programme Officer at Alzheimer's Association. And in this episode, we're discussing the links between improving brain health by playing sports like pickleball. In other words, how pickleball can help kick Alzheimer's arse. Actually, I think America's way more progressive with mental health than we are in the UK. We're sort of getting somewhere, but to have a therapist, your friends will sort of look at you kind of think, are you okay?
Yeah, that's very true. We don't really indulge in that, do we? I know it's indulgence, that's the wrong word, I know. But we don't really go to a therapist, and we certainly don't talk about it if we do. I mean,
we don't talk about anything.
No, I know.
British people don't.
Yeah, we are. I know, we're very secretive and stoic about things. I mean, does a therapist help at all?
So I think with someone who has those early cognitive changes, absolutely, and for families to help them work through how to even have the conversation with family and friends about the changes that they're experiencing and the frustration that they feel. People in the early stages absolutely recognize the changes that are happening. They might not be able to put a name to it or really understand why, but they know that they're happening. I mean, if you think about yourself, you know when something's different for yourself. And we've heard from our early stage advisors that they welcome ways to be able to share their story. I think we're starting to see this movement of people with Alzheimer's and dementia who do want to put a name to it and want to show people that you can live well with Alzheimer's in the early to sort of early moderate stages of the disease. And of course, the new treatments are changing that as well, because it's giving people a lot more hope and the potential for living well longer. But I think that it also helps them to work through how to process those changes and to not sort of blame themselves for those changes. So I think it can be very helpful.
Yeah.
And your point about mental health is really important too. I think a lot of people think also of Alzheimer's as a mental health issue. It's a biological change that's happening in the brain, and I think it's part of why it has such a stigma.
That's interesting.
Like mental health.
So I'll bring this back in a minute so you'll understand. So sexually transmitted diseases was considered very taboo. So people weren't going to clinics, they weren't talking about the fact they have a disease. So what they did is they positioned it as sexually transmitted infections, so STIs.
Yeah.
So an infection is, that's something that wasn't my fault, whereas a disease is like, I carry the disease and it's me and it's whatever.
Infection's easily curable.
And that's right. So it changed perception on sexually transmitted diseases by completely repositioning. It's like global warming versus climate change. It's exactly the same sort of thing. To what degree would you like to see, or are we able to see that change in narrative and change in positioning? What do you think as an organisation, you, or as a society, us, should be doing to change that narrative?
Yeah, and I think it's hard in some ways, because I think we also have to be as hopeful as I am in 2025 about new treatments, about things like the U.S. Pointer study. This still is an incurable terminal disease that we still do not have a cure for Alzheimer's. And so I think we need to be positive and encouraging, but I think we have a responsibility to be realistic as well, and not paint it as like, oh, it's no big deal, when it's the costliest disease in the U.S. and it is going to progress over time. Even with some of the treatments today, it's not going to stop those plaques and tangles from happening. So it's a challenging question to answer in a sense, because on one hand, you want to be able to reframe it in this really positive way and remove the stigma and remove some of those barriers. But the reality is, it's still what it is. And so we need families to be prepared, and we need people who are exhibiting symptoms to not shy away from getting a diagnosis. I think that's where we have our biggest opportunity, is around early detection and making sure that we don't ignore those warning signs and actually talk to our healthcare professional. And then at the same time, we need to work within primary care to ensure that they're ready to talk about Alzheimer's, because right now they don't feel prepared to talk about Alzheimer's in a PCP setting.
You know, you just talked about going to events. You have your table, your sort of tablecloth out with your branding. What we were thinking about is how pickleball can play a huge role in that. So when people go to a pickleball court, now let's just say it's done in collaborations with Alzheimer's Association. So in an area, an event-related, almost recruitment drive or marketing message around pickleball, where people aren't really expecting to be talking about brain-related health. So I think you change the narrative, not just in what you say, but the way you say it and the way that you engage. And what we were talking about was, well, if the event was around pickleball, which is completely almost counterintuitive, really, you know, from a table with a cloth over that says outside, I'm going away. Whereas pickleball is drawing people from all over the world, but drawing people into this crazy sport. You know, there's just it's on the rise in terms of the amount of people coming into it, but also the opportunity to talk about other sort of social messages. And the great thing about pickleball is it's almost social glue. It brings everybody together. It's a great community sport. And we were thinking about ideas along those lines that would raise money for the charity, but also be able to promote the message, but in a very, very positive and inclusive way, and tell people about the benefits of health-related, brain-related health. We thought that was just pretty cool. Well, whether that actually comes to anything, we don't know, but we thought it was a great way to bring people in.
Well, and I think it's a safe way for people to get really good information. And part of why people don't call is because they either don't know that they need to call or how to call. And yet, if you can find people where they're doing other things and not scare them with all the statistics, but really talk about some concrete, easy, evidence-based things that everybody can do to decrease your risks, then they walk away having that knowledge. And I think it's where, you know, when we think about public health and the impact of Alzheimer's as a public health issue, it's never really sort of seen that way, and yet it really is, especially when you put it in that way.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Making it less taboo, I suppose.
Yeah.
Somehow talking about it. I mean, you say that in England we don't talk about it much, but it's interesting, we're now talking a lot about our funerals. We're organising our funerals in advance. That's no longer a taboo subject. People are in their will saying, I want these people to come. And it's quite funny actually crossing people off each year and adding people. That's quite a lot. But what music you want, who you want to spit, you know. So we are kind of addressing that. So the questions I want to ask you is those. Can I ask you first actually, are doctors equipped to assess Alzheimer's? Because normally with most things you can go to a doctor, they test your cholesterol, they look into your eyes, look into your ears or whatever, and they say, oh right, you need to do this. Can they spot early signs of Alzheimer's? Are they reliable?
I think that it very much depends on the doctor. And I think primary care is our biggest need to be able to diagnose early, because most people that's where they're going to start, and it's their primary care physician that knows them the best. But up until recently, there hasn't been anything more than cognitive testing and tests to rule out other things. So they would do a battery of cognitive tests, as well as history and physical and MRIs. But what they're looking for on the MRIs is anything else that could be causing the challenges. They can't see the plaques and tangles. They can see the vascular changes from a stroke, but they'd be able to diagnose a stroke on an MRI, but not Alzheimer's. We can with PET scans, but they're very expensive. And even though they are now finally covered by Medicare, they're not going to be primarily used as a diagnostic tool because they cost too much money. And so we've got these advancements with blood tests that are now approved by the FDA, but they're not standalone tests yet, not like a cholesterol test where you will know definitively. It will show you the evidence of amyloid, but it really shouldn't be used standalone. So it was a very long answer to say, I think they're our biggest area of opportunity when it comes to providing them with simple guidelines and tools. And it can be done. I think there's a way for us to really think about how we make those systems changes within healthcare to equip them with the information and then model how to give a simple cognitive decline. Everybody over the age of 65 should be getting their annual Medicare wellness test exam. Most people don't take advantage of it, but there is a cognitive battery in that annual wellness that would at least be a starting place for people.
So nuts and bolts, early signs.
Certainly memory loss. But when we think about memory loss, it's short-term memory. So you've got short-term memory, long-term memory, sensory memory. Long-term memory, who was your first teacher that you had, if you remember that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? That's your long-term memory. What were the color of the curtains in your childhood bedroom? Long-term memory. Short-term memory, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Did you take your medication? Where did I park my car? So it's those short-term memory that is impacted in Alzheimer's disease. Long-term memory stays intact far longer, and sometimes in some people never disappears. It does for some, but it's those short-term memories that allow us to remain independent, to do our grocery shopping. But it's also things like spatial visual issues. So losing that sort of depth perception where you can't really see from either side. It's where driving can sometimes be a challenge. Seeing the difference
is helpful.
Really helpful.
Yeah.
Things like challenges in remembering recent experiences. So forgetting that you had conversations with people completely.
Only sounds like ticking off this list. And I was told forgetting appointments.
Yeah, like
that was an interesting
challenges with time and place. Certainly, like messing up appointments, getting them confused if things aren't written down, and certainly problems with mood and behavior. You talked about mental health issues and changes in personality and problems with mood and behavior, which can also be symptoms of other things like depression. And so it's why it's really important when you see any of these signs that you do talk to your healthcare professional.
And you mentioned sleep as well.
Sleep is so important. They're doing a lot of research on the benefits of sleep, not just.
But do you have bad sleep if you've got Alzheimer's, or is it around the other way?
It can be that your sleep is your sleep time is messed up.
Yeah.
So it can be that you're up all night and then sleep during the day, or that you just sleep all the time.
Right.
But that's more of a later stage issue for caregivers.
Right.
Yeah.
And anything else, or is that?
I probably didn't name all 10 of them,
I
but
think he's slightly concerned.
Is he checking? Do you want to count from backwards from 100 by sevens?
I can do that. Right, 100 what by sevens?
By sevens.
Okay, that takes some going. Blimey.
Really? Can you do
93.
That? I can get to
86.
That's about
86, 79, 72.
It's good.
Yeah, I'm not bad at maths.
You're pretty good at numbers, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it's all relative to how much you drink as well in my case.
I know. I was going to not ask that question because I almost don't want to know the answer.
Because being an English person, we drink too much. Everyone knows that.
I think people in California drink just as much as we do.
Do you think it's more secretive, isn't it?
I don't think it's
behind
secretive,
closed doors.
but I think so.
Not in pubs. We all get leathered in pubs together.
Exactly. But moving to California from London, I felt like I was on vacation every single day, on holiday every single day. And when you go on holiday, right, you go for 2 weeks, you're going to drink every day, and then you come back and dry out. I've been on holiday for 6 years. And by the way, I'm not drinking every day, but it,
and
more than
it makes it easier to
exactly.
to drink,
and you can hydrate after a game of pickleball with a couple of beers, and then maybe that turns into it's a gateway drug into a couple of bottles of wine or whatever. Is there a link? This sort of strong link between.
There has to be, surely.
So there's 2 ways to answer that question. First of all, there is a dementia that is related to alcohol or drug abuse. So if you do have too much alcohol, too much too many drugs, it can cause the dementia, right? The loss of function. That's separate from what you're asking, which is, is it bad to drink? Is drinking contributing to Alzheimer's disease? I don't think there's any direct link there that it's causing Alzheimer's disease. Is it overall good for our overall health? Probably not. There's been some research to talk about red wine, the antioxidants in red wine actually have some potential protective benefit. I don't know that that's
good for the heart.
There's been some studies. I don't think they're really that robust of studies, but if it helps you with a Cabernet or a Malbec in the evening, then use that little bit of information. But it is a glass, and actually the diet that we used in the Pointer study is called the MIND diet.
Oh, that sounds good.
The original MIND diet, a glass of wine did not count against you in your daily score. It was actually one glass of red wine was okay. We didn't include that in Pointer, but it is in the original diet.
And other food groups that would be really beneficial, what would they be?
Dark green leafy vegetables, so kale, broccoli, all of those dark greens. Lean proteins, turkey, chicken, not processed meats.
Veal. Venison, I meant.
Okay,
venison.
I was going to say, I don't know
veal.
Yeah.
Venison is very lean as well.
Yeah. Fish, especially salmon, tuna, those that are high in the omega-3 fatty acids.
Right. Oh, the oily
blueberries,
ones. Yeah.
Strawberries. Blueberries are supposed to be sort of a power fruit.
This is all the same for cholesterol and the heart.
Exactly.
So there's a link.
Yeah. So there's, the way I look at it is, I think everything that's happening below the neck is impacting what's happening above the neck. And again, it's not to say if you eat this diet, you will not get Alzheimer's disease. I have to be very clear about that because it's not a preventative thing. But we see the research is solid around it being the best for your cognitive function that it can be.
So if you spot any of these telltale signs, they're very minor. You forget an appointment and you can't believe you forgot an appointment. You should be a little bit concerned, and it's a shot across the bows. You should start looking at your diet and think that it could get worse. You might as well, there's no point in not.
Everyone should think about some of these things, and I think that's what we're trying to think about now as we start to implement some of the research that's coming out, is how do we change the narrative in even 5 and 10-year-olds to make sure that in a country where ultra processed foods are more than 20% of Americans' diet in some cases, and yet consuming ultra processed foods can potentially lead to a 28% increased risk of dementia if you consume more than 20% of your daily calories from ultra processed. So it's starting early as well. But I think certainly for older adults, or even 50-year-olds, because that's not older adults, right?
No,
just
50's the new 30.
That's right. That thinking about all of these things, thinking about how am I going to position myself to age the best that I can, is the time to do it. 40s, 50s.
Unfortunately, you never do that, do you? You don't think about the future when you're 30ish, and got lots of disposable income and no kids and enjoying yourself. You don't you don't think about. But I suppose the more that you tell people about the benefits, the more it might happen, I guess.
Well, and I think now that we have the evidence to show that it actually could do something, we've been talking about these types of lifestyle changes for years. What we did in Pointer was changed behavior, and we all know that's the hardest thing to do, right? As the older you get, to change that behavior. So the younger you can change your behavior for these modifications, the easier it will be.
Did brain disease exist, say, in Victorian times?
So
do you think
Dr. Alzheimer first discovered the disease in 1906. He had a patient. He had a patient who was in her 50s who he thought just wasn't matching the diagnosis that she had, and so after she died at 54, he did an autopsy of her brain, and that's when he first discovered that buildup of amyloid and the tau tangles. Okay. So has it been around since the early 1900s or earlier? Yes. Have we talked about it as Alzheimer's? Not until probably the 90s and even 2000s. When I first started in nursing homes, I mean, we just called it senility, right?
Right, that's right. That's
just
senile,
granny, right?
That's right, yeah.
So it's been around, but we've never really had, even in the 90s, a good name for it.
I only asked that because there was no processed food in the Victorian times, and everyone, when you look at old films of people tottering around London at high speed, they're all really thin. It's unbelievable. Maybe because they can't afford any food, but they're generally eating better. They're eating fresh food and they're cooking at home. I just wondered whether there was any relation, whether there was less Alzheimer's than there is now, whether it was just because we detect it more now.
And we're living longer now,
Yeah, we are,
right?
yeah.
So if age is the
that's
biggest
true.
risk factor, and you think of
people.
over 65, that's going to change. It's
I
hard
guess
to
people
compare.
were dying at 65 then, weren't they?
Exactly,
So didn't get the opportunity to have Alzheimer's,
Claire, as we start sort of rounding this up, I'd love to know how you are funded as an organisation. Is it a government-funded thing, or do you fund it yourself? I mean, how are you as an organisation remunerated?
So the majority of the funding that we get are from people, private people that donate to us either through our signature events or who make gifts to us. We do have some grants that come from the state of California at our chapter. That varies from chapter to chapter, and we certainly are lucky enough to have some corporate sponsors for some of our events that are in the area, but primarily most of our funds come from the community, from people who raise money for the Walk to End Alzheimer's, through Do What You Love to End Alzheimer's, through just making those annual gifts, or just want to contribute a gift to the association to help us deliver on those free programs and services that we offer.
And we mentioned earlier on that people often get involved in Alzheimer's in your fantastic company, or what do we call it, society, too late. Because they've either got a loved one who's got Alzheimer's and they have to look after them. So how can people get involved in your society early? What do they have to do? Could they volunteer or
Certainly, we're always looking for volunteers. There's always events that are happening that people can get involved with, especially if you've got a group of students or you belong to a community group that wants a day of volunteering. There's lots of opportunities for that. And I think it's spreading the word about not only what we do to support families, caregivers, and people living with dementia once there is a diagnosis, but even spreading the word about those 10 healthy habits and learning what we can learn about things that have actual evidence behind them can really help to spread the word and just make people know that there's opportunities out there.
Yeah,
Can you tell us, or tell our listeners a little bit more about Do What You Love? That, I mean, that's such a lovely way of putting things, isn't it? So what is that?
So it's just a great opportunity for people to help to raise money however they want. So it could be through pickleball. It could be because they want to have a bake sale in their neighborhood, a yard sale if they're getting rid of, cleaning out all of those antiques and things that they want to get rid of. It's whatever they want to do. They could host a wine night, a karaoke night, just any sort of thing that someone loves to do. We can find a way to really use it as a way to spread awareness, spread information, and raise money at the same time.
And change the narrative in the course, isn't
Absolutely.
it? That's the most important thing, almost. What we're looking at with Los Gatos Saratoga, who I work for as a coach, is running an event. Maybe it's a tournament. You pay $50 for the tournament, and there is a prize. But of course, all the money goes to Alzheimer's Association. So it's those sorts of events you're looking more of. Because I was thinking,
Absolutely.
what more can we get our community doing? What can our listeners here in Northern California and further afield help?
But that's to raise money, isn't it, specifically? There's no point in doing it unless at that event you're actually making people more aware of Alzheimer's, is there? Like, you could say, when you return that volley, that used up these 3 things that you should be looking, that if you can relate pickleball to the good things to do to prevent Alzheimer's, then it makes it more sort of pertinent in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think that honestly, as the various pickleball associations within the US should be promoting
they should
this.
be.
It was almost hand in glove. I think that tennis in America positioned the sport as the healthiest sport in the world, and obviously one of the reasons, because physical health, but there's also mental health, as a brain health is inextricably linked to it as well. But I think pickleball being way more accessible, and of course such a growth area, particularly
and more sociable,
much more sociable, and also older.
Yeah,
and so what we're seeing
is target
people,
market. Yeah,
totally, because people migrate from tennis into pickleball when they hit a certain age and lose a bit of athleticism and want a sort of smaller court. So it seems to absolutely work. But yeah, I'd love to know if there's anything more, or what communities should be doing really to help you in your cause. Is there anything that on the top of your mind that by doing this, it's going to really help our cause?
Well, I think that one of the powers that community has is to tell someone else that something's happening, right? So we talk a lot about the fact that we have this huge population in California, and we're only hitting a small portion of those caregivers that we know need the help, and partly it's because they don't even know where to start to look for help. And so I think for people to know that there's information and education out there, and if they belong to a group, belong to a church, belong to an organization, that they could invite us in to do an awareness presentation, to just talk about some of these healthy habits, to keep that conversation going. That's hugely helpful for us.
Superb. What about you, Montgomery? You got any more questions?
No, it's been fascinating, actually. Did we actually go over the 10 healthy things? Did we actually list those? We
can put them on our website.
Yeah. We've covered them all in some way. I don't know that we talked about reading a book, but that's the cognitive.
Yeah, sure. I play Scrabble every day.
Very good.
I try and do that as much as I possibly can. That helps, I think.
All of those brain games little
tiny way. No, it's been brilliant. I've really learnt so much, and I hope
has it been slightly intimidating for you being around an absolute expert in what they do? Someone who's fabulously erudite and also clever and just has
but could you use a broadcast camera? So that's what I can do.
Exactly. You got me.
Can you play pickleball?
I will say I'm almost embarrassed to tell you that I've never played pickleball.
Okay. Well, I'm going to change that.
Okay.
Would you like to? Would you like to play?
I would. Yeah. I was.
Did you play tennis or anything?
I did play tennis.
Well, there you go. There's no excuse.
Tennis.
Then we will make sure that you learn how to. I think Ken was also saying. So we should organise a game at the Bay with the four of us.
Excellent.
Yeah, and we'll give you some good coaching. Claire, I think you're phenomenal, and your organisation is incredibly important to society. And absolutely, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And as I said, this is sort of quite an emotional episode for me, so for my mother in particular. And I thank you hugely for what you do, and massively for coming on the show.
And I think I hope this podcast has persuaded people who don't play pickleball listen to us to play pickleball, and has persuaded the people who do play pickleball that it's a really, really good idea to continue it, because it really, really should slow up it getting worse, because it hits all the health points that you need. So I hope that's come across.
I hope so. Undoubtedly. Thanks to Claire. Definitely.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Thanks very much. And
thank you.
I was going to sign out by saying Who Dinks Wins is broadcast by KCAT TV on Xfinity Channel 15, Los Gatos and Monte Sereno, and kcat.org. And it's a great way to reach a local audience right here in the Bay Area. Who Dinks Wins will be broadcast Mondays and Fridays at 8 p.m, coming very soon. If you want to sponsor the show or an episode and help support the Los Gatos community who make the shows, reach out to us at Special Pickleball Service at gmail.com to find out more. You can follow our show on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. Just search Who Dinks Wins, and if you can leave us a rating or a comment, we'd be super appreciate that. Thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from Montgomery, and it's
goodbye from Claire.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you, guys. You were amazing.
Still here.
If you have any questions or concerns arising from this podcast, please go to the Alzheimer's Association website on www.alz.org, and you can follow the links below the podcast. It might just be the best decision you'll ever make.